Have you ever sat quietly and wondered, when did things change between me and my children for so many years? You poured your heart into raising them. You were there through sleepless nights, wiping away tears, cheering at their games, guiding them through heartbreaks, and celebrating their victories. You gave up weekends, vacations, and sometimes even your own dreams so that theirs could come true. Back then, you were the center of their world, the protector, the teacher, the one they always turned to. But now, something feels different. When you try to speak, they interrupt. When you offer advice, they brush it aside. When you ask for help, they suddenly seem too busy. And perhaps most painful of all, you sometimes feel invisible in the very family you devoted your life to building. That kind of hurt cuts deeper than almost anything else, because it is not just about being overlooked. It is about feeling that the bond you worked so hard to nurture is slipping away. It is natural in those moments to want to argue, to remind them of everything you have done, to demand the respect you deserve. Yet demanding respect rarely brings it back. What truly restores it is something far more powerful, something quieter and more dignified. In this message, we will explore how to stop trying too hard to please, how to lead with calm instead of argument, how to build a fulfilling life beyond your children, and how to set boundaries that invite respect back into your relationships. 1. Stop trying too hard to please. One of the most common patterns I see among parents as they grow older is the tendency to try too hard to please their adult children. It usually begins with small decisions, the kind that seem harmless at first. You agree to babysit the grandchildren even when you are exhausted. You lend money even when it puts pressure on your own budget. Or you stay quiet when your son or daughter speaks in a way that hurts because you do not want to be labeled difficult. Each of these choices, taken by itself, might not feel significant, but repeated over months and years, they create a quiet but powerful message. That message is this: your needs matter less than everyone else's. Here is the truth, and it may be difficult to hear. The more you chase your children's approval, the less they respect you, not because they are ungrateful or unloving, but because human nature does not value what always yields. People respect strength, steadiness, and clarity. They respond to those who know their own worth. When you bend over backward every time, you unintentionally teach your children that your time, your voice, and your presence can be taken for granted. Eleanor, a mother from Boston, is a perfect example. She raised 4 children with dedication and poured every ounce of her energy into her family. Yet as the years passed, she began stepping aside more and more. She let her children make decisions about her home, her doctors, and even her finances. "I just want to keep the family together," she said, believing her sacrifices were a way to show love. But the more she gave up her place, the less they listened to her. Her children loved her, yes, but they no longer saw her as someone whose voice carried weight. Over time, her role shifted from respected matriarch to background figure. The lesson here is clear. Respect does not come from endless sacrifice. It comes from self-respect. When you ignore your own needs or silence your own feelings in order to avoid conflict, you teach those around you that those needs and feelings can be ignored too. And when that pattern continues, it becomes harder and harder to reclaim your dignity. That does not mean you must become harsh or unkind. It means you must stand in your truth with calm confidence. Imagine telling your daughter, "I'd love to watch the children, but I already have a doctor's appointment that day. Let's find another time." Or telling your son, "I don't appreciate that tone. Let's pause and talk when we can both be respectful." These are not confrontations. They are reminders that your time, your energy, and your presence have value. William, a retired firefighter from Ohio, once believed being a good father meant saying yes to every request. He was the one his children called for car repairs, financial help, and babysitting. And he always came, no matter how tired or unwell he felt. But he began to notice that his children rarely asked how he was doing. They assumed his help was automatic. The turning point came when he missed his own medical appointment to help one of his daughters move. That day he realized he had been giving away more than just his time, he had been giving away his dignity. From then on, William decided that not every request deserved an automatic yes. He still helped, but only when he genuinely wanted to and when he could do so without hurting himself. At first, his children resisted. They were used to his constant availability, but eventually they adjusted, and something beautiful happened. They began thanking him again. They planned ahead before asking. They showed more consideration. Because his help was no longer guaranteed, it became valuable again. This is the shift I encourage you to consider. Stop saying yes when your heart says no. Pause before you agree to something and ask yourself, am I able to do this without resentment? If the answer is no, then it is not only okay to decline, it is necessary. You can say, I wish I could help, but I am not available that day. Or, I'd be glad to help, but I need you to take care of these other details first. These responses are not selfish. They are healthy. They teach your children that your life has equal worth, that your schedule matters, and that your needs deserve respect. And here is the remarkable thing. When you respect yourself, others begin to respect you too. It may not happen instantly. In fact, at first, your children might resist or feel surprised, but with consistency, the message will sink in. They will realize that you are no longer someone to be taken for granted, but someone to be valued. So if you have been bending over backward to keep the peace, let this be your gentle reminder. Respect does not grow from sacrifice alone. It grows from standing firmly in your truth. It grows when you begin to honor your own needs and your own voice. And that is not selfish. It is necessary for love to remain strong and balanced. If what I have shared resonates with you, I invite you to leave a comment below. Have you ever found yourself saying yes when deep down you wanted to say no? Sharing your story could be the encouragement another parent needs. And if this message feels meaningful, please take a moment to give the video a like so more people can discover it and be encouraged. Transition. Once you begin to honor your own needs and set gentle but firm limits, there is another temptation you will need to resist: the urge to argue when you are disrespected. That is what we will explore in the next section. 2. Stop arguing. Start leading. When someone we love speaks down to us or dismisses our words, it can cut deeply. The natural instinct is to push back, to defend ourselves, to remind them of all the years of sacrifice and care we gave. Many parents in those moments want to shout, "How dare you speak to me that way?" or list every sleepless night, every meal cooked, every moment of devotion. That urge is human. But here is the hard truth. Arguing rarely restores respect. More often, it hardens hearts and creates even more distance. Respect is not earned by shouting louder or insisting longer. Respect grows from the way you carry yourself, the calmness in your presence, and the steadiness in your voice. Think back to the leaders you admired in your own life. Were they the ones who barked the loudest orders? Or were they the ones who spoke firmly but calmly? The ones who seemed unshaken even in difficult moments? True authority does not require yelling. True authority radiates from quiet confidence. Harold, a retired high school principal from Chicago, learned this lesson the hard way. For decades in the classroom, he was admired by his students. His voice carried authority, and when he spoke, the room grew quiet. But at home with his adult children, he found himself dismissed. They interrupted him, laughed at his opinions, and treated his stories as irrelevant. At first, Harold fought back. He raised his voice, argued his points, and tried to win every conversation. Family dinners turned into debates. Phone calls turned into battles, and the warmth in the home seemed to vanish. One day, Harold realized that every time he lost his temper, he was proving his children's point that his words carried no weight, so he made a shift. Instead of arguing, he began to slow down. When interrupted, he paused and calmly finished his thought. When dismissed, he no longer shouted. He simply said, "You don't have to agree with me, but I deserve to be heard." He carried himself not as a man begging for respect, but as someone who already had it. And slowly, his children noticed. They began to listen, not because he forced them to, but because he no longer played the same old game. This is the lesson. You don't have to fight for respect. You live it. When you remain calm, when you refuse to let anger dictate your words, you send a message louder than shouting ever could. You show that your sense of worth is not up for debate. Patricia, a grandmother from Texas, had a similar experience. Her daughter often brushed off her parenting advice with a sharp, "Mom, times are different now." Patricia used to fire back, "Well, I raised you, didn't I?" which always led to heated arguments. One day, Patricia decided to respond differently. When her daughter dismissed her, she smiled gently and said, "I'll share my thoughts if you'd like to hear them." Then she stopped speaking. The silence startled her daughter, who finally replied, "Okay, Mom, go ahead." Patricia later told me, "It was the first time in years she actually leaned in to listen, because I didn't try to force it." Calm leadership does not mean silence. It does not mean letting others walk over you. It means knowing who you are and refusing to let disrespect pull you into chaos. Imagine yourself as an oak tree in the middle of a storm. The wind may howl, the branches may bend, but the roots remain firm. The tree does not argue with the wind. It simply stands. And over time, the storm passes. So what does this look like in everyday life? If your child interrupts you, instead of snapping, calmly say, "I'd like to finish what I was saying." If they raise their voice, you might respond, "I'll continue when we can both speak respectfully." If they dismiss your opinion, you can say, "You don't need to agree, but I ask that you allow me to share." These are not combative statements. They are calm declarations of self-respect. At first, your children may resist. They may roll their eyes or push back. But with time, consistency will speak louder than any argument. They will begin to notice that you no longer react the way you used to. And in that steady presence, respect has a chance to return. It takes practice. You may feel your heartbeat quicken and your tongue itch to snap back. But every time you pause, breathe, and choose calm strength over argument, you strengthen the foundation of respect in your family. And perhaps even more importantly, you preserve your own peace of mind. If you have ever tried staying calm instead of arguing and noticed the difference it makes, I would love for you to share it in the comments. Your story could give courage to another parent who is struggling in the same cycle. And if this message gives you encouragement today, please take a moment to give the video a like so that others can discover it as well. Transition. Now that we have seen how calm leadership can transform the way your children respond to you, we need to look at another step that frees you from disappointment, learning to create a fulfilling life beyond your children. That is what we will explore in the next section. 3. Create a life beyond them. One of the most difficult shifts for many parents to make is realizing that their children cannot and should not be the only source of emotional fulfillment. When your children were young, their laughter, their hugs, their daily triumphs were the center of your world. That made sense at the time. But as they grow older and begin to live their own lives, something painful can happen if you continue to depend entirely on them for your sense of happiness. You can start to feel invisible when the phone doesn't ring, or crushed when weeks go by without a visit, or anxious when your worth seems tied to their attention. It is a cycle that leaves you waiting, longing, and disappointed. The truth is, respect and dignity are born when you no longer rely on your children to make you feel whole. Emotional independence doesn't mean you stop loving them or that you withdraw your care. It means you begin to draw joy, peace, and meaning from your own life as well, so that when they call or visit, it feels like a gift instead of a lifeline. I think of Ruth, a widow from North Carolina, who once told me her entire sense of self depended on whether her kids picked up the phone. She called them every day, left messages when they didn't answer, and often reminded them how lonely she felt. The harder she reached, the more they pulled away. "I thought I was showing love," she said, but they seemed to hear it as pressure. One day, Ruth decided to make a change. Instead of sitting by the phone, she joined a painting class at the local community center. She signed up for a neighborhood walking group. She picked up books she had not touched in years. Slowly, her laughter returned. And soon something remarkable happened. Her phone began to ring. Her children wanted to hear about her life, about the people she was meeting, about the joy she was finding. Without chasing their attention, she had attracted it back. This shift isn't only Ruth's story. It is something I have seen time and again. When parents rediscover the parts of themselves that were put on hold while raising a family, their children begin to see them differently. They no longer see someone waiting by the window, but someone living fully, and that change draws them closer. Consider Henry, a retired postal worker from Michigan. After retiring, he spent his days sitting in his recliner, watching television, waiting for his kids to drop by. Holidays were the only moments he felt alive. Eventually, he decided he was tired of waiting. He began volunteering twice a week at a food pantry, where he found friendship and purpose. He started gardening in his backyard, sharing fresh vegetables with neighbors. Before long, his kids began visiting more often, curious to hear about the people he was meeting and the lives he was touching. Henry discovered something powerful when you live a meaningful life of your own. Your children respect and admire you in a new way. So I ask you gently, what brings you joy outside of your family? What lights you up inside? Maybe it is music, painting, traveling, fishing, gardening, or simply sharing a quiet coffee with an old friend. Perhaps it is something you set aside decades ago, promising yourself you would return to it when the children were grown. Well, the children are grown. The time is now, and do not underestimate the small things. A morning walk, a library visit, a community class, these are not trivial. They are building blocks of a life that feels steady and fulfilling. And when your children see you enjoying those small joys, it changes how they perceive you. They begin to see not just mom or dad, but a person of depth and vibrancy. Of course, loneliness is real. The silence of an empty house can weigh heavily, but loneliness becomes lighter when you fill your days with meaning, when you find connections outside the home, and when you remind yourself that your story did not end when your children grew up. This is a new chapter, and you have every right to write it with color, adventure, and laughter. The irony is that the less you cling to their attention, the more they will naturally want to be around you. Because people are drawn to joy. They are drawn to confidence. And when you nurture those qualities in yourself, your children will feel it too. So I encourage you to take one small step. Join that class, call that friend, plan that trip, or pick up that hobby you have been postponing. Let your children see that you are not only their parent, but also a person living fully, with dignity and purpose. That image will inspire them more than any words ever could. If this reflection resonates with you, I would love for you to share in the comments what activity or passion you would like to explore or return to. Sometimes naming it is the first step toward living it. And if these words have brought you encouragement, please take a moment to give the video a like so others in our community can find this reminder too. With this foundation of living fully for yourself, there remains one more essential piece in reclaiming respect, and that is learning how to set strong, clear, and loving boundaries. That is where we will turn in the next section. 4. Boundaries, balance, and reclaiming respect. Boundaries are something many of us were never taught to practice in our families. We were encouraged to give, to sacrifice, to stay quiet for the sake of peace. And we believed that was the truest expression of love. But love without boundaries can quietly turn into resentment, and silence over time becomes permission for others to treat us in ways that leave us feeling small. When children interrupt you constantly, dismiss your advice, or speak sharply, it often isn't because they mean to be cruel. More often, it is because the limits were never made clear. In the absence of boundaries, people naturally push further, not out of malice, but simply because nothing has told them to stop. Take Robert, a respected lawyer in New York. In the courtroom, his words carried authority. At home, though, his adult children cut him off and treated his opinions as if they were unimportant. For years, Robert stayed silent, telling himself it wasn't worth the conflict. But one evening at dinner, when his son snapped at him, he decided to speak. He didn't shout or argue. He simply waited and said calmly, "You don't have to agree with me, but I do expect to be spoken to with respect. If that isn't possible, I'll excuse myself." That single moment marked a turning point. His children realized their father meant what he said, and slowly the way they spoke to him began to change. Boundaries are not about building walls. They are gentle but firm guideposts that say, "This is what I allow, and this is what I don't." When they are expressed with steadiness, people begin to adjust. They also apply to how much you give. Many parents fall into the trap of endless generosity, believing that constant help will keep them close to their children. But when giving becomes automatic and unacknowledged, it doesn't create deeper love, it creates expectation. George, a father of 3 from California, knew this feeling all too well. Even in his 70s, he rushed to help every time his children called. He lent money, fixed cars, and rearranged his own appointments to babysit on short notice. But when he needed support after a minor surgery, no one came. That moment shook him. Instead of exploding, he quietly decided to change. From then on, his help would no longer be automatic. He would still give, but only when he truly wanted to and when it was appreciated. At first, his children were surprised, even frustrated, but soon they began to thank him again, because they realized his presence was not guaranteed. It was valuable. This is the gift of healthy boundaries. They don't push people away. They remind others that your time, your energy, and your presence are precious. They shift the relationship from assumption back to appreciation. So what does this look like for you? It may mean calmly asking to finish your thought when someone interrupts. It may mean stepping away from a heated conversation until voices are calmer. It may mean pausing before you say yes and choosing only when you can help without resentment. Boundaries are not about distance. They are about clarity, and clarity creates respect. When you honor your own limits, you teach your children to honor them too. Over time, they stop seeing you as someone who can always be taken for granted and begin to see you again as someone whose presence is a privilege. If you have ever set a boundary and noticed how it reshaped your relationship, I invite you to share your story in the comments. You may be surprised how your words give courage to another parent who needs to do the same. And if you believe more families should hear this message, please take a moment to give the video a like so it can reach those who need it most. Now that we've explored the importance of boundaries, let's take a step back and look at the bigger picture. Because at the heart of everything we've discussed, respect does not come from arguing harder or pleasing more. It comes from the quiet strength of honoring yourself. And that is the message we will close with in our final reflection. Final thought. At the heart of everything we have talked about today lies one simple truth. Respect is not something that can be demanded, nor is it something that magically appears when we sacrifice endlessly. Respect grows quietly from the way we choose to live each day. It grows when we stop bending ourselves out of shape to please everyone else, when we stop arguing and start leading with calm, when we create a life that is full and meaningful beyond our children, and when we set boundaries that make clear our worth. You matter, not because of how much you have given or how much you continue to do, but simply because you are you. You carry a lifetime of wisdom, strength, and love. And the moment you begin honoring yourself again, the world around you begins to respond differently. Your children may take time to adjust because they have grown used to the version of you that always said yes, stayed quiet, or gave endlessly without asking for anything in return. Change can feel uncomfortable for them and for you, but with time, they will begin to see you again, not as someone clinging for attention, but as someone standing tall with dignity and calm strength. So I invite you to reflect gently. Where in your life are you still giving away your power? Is it in always saying yes when you long to say no, in keeping silent when your voice deserves to be heard, or in waiting for your children's approval before you feel whole? Wherever it is, begin there. Take one small step this week toward reclaiming your voice. If these words have touched your heart, I encourage you to share a comment, even a simple "I am ready to reclaim respect." And if this message has been meaningful, Please give the video a like and subscribe so you never miss another encouragement. Remember this as you move forward. You are worthy, you are strong, and living with dignity is the most powerful legacy you can leave.